Hi everyone, welcome back to episode 4 of Last Minute FPL. This is our Gameweek 4 podcast. Hi Vikas, how are you?
Good. Had a good break. Much needed one where I completely disengaged, especially after a pathetic week before that. So I'm really feeling in good spirits at the moment.
Yeah, and we were just talking before we started streaming, and Vikas was saying that he doesn't really remember what happened and he's recovered from all the trauma. So time and space helps for sure. Why don't we get into it? Uh, for once, I'm the one who got the most points in game week 3. So with 81 points, with Haaland captain, I went up from 4 million to 2.5 million. Quite happy about it, but a little sour in the end because Salah and Diaz ended up doing really well for Liverpool, which made this more like an average-ish score. But happy that Eze and Isaac finally got in the points. One thing, this new screenshot that you're seeing, credit to fplscreenshot.com for creating this nice visual. I thought it'll be nice to show this instead of the FPL website screenshot.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, such a strong week. Could have been even better with João Pedro on the bench, sitting with 8 points there.
Yeah, that's a bit frustrating. He scored the goal after Arsenal went down to 10 men. But yeah, I think I got a bit greedy. Robinson had got an assist and he was playing Ipswich. So I thought, if not now, then when will I play him? But yeah, I mean, it's actually good that I have Pedro and he scored. His price will go up and like he's kind of become the go-to cheap forward option. So not too sad about it. Moving on, finishing second last week was the AI team with 80 points. Once again, no Haaland. Haaland scores a hat-trick. And the AI team actually doesn't even get the captaincy right and still gets 80 points. So many ways to play the game this year. Of course, Salah. Look at that attack. All 7 players returned. That won't happen every week, but
Incredible.
Yeah, kind of a dream scenario for the AI.
Yeah, I mean, like, Saka captain, 6 points is decent, but the captaincy of Haaland scoring 34, it's just unbelievable that the AI team's still keeping up. It shows there's so many good options, like you said, and I think it's leading to a lot of confusion for me because I feel like I want everyone at the moment, whereas that kind of clearly shows that there is just multiple ways to play and no one seems like they're essential at the moment.
Yeah, I'm sure the hindsight optimal team will definitely have Salah and Haaland. Both of them, I think, are on the same points after 3 weeks. But the AI team is in the top 1 million, having got the captaincy wrong on a couple of occasions, missing out on Haaland hat-tricks. So I think it's positive signs for at least you and me. We're trailing a lot behind in most of our mini leagues. So we'll always have differentials, hopefully, to try and catch up. And moving on to your team, you had a couple of good weeks to start with, but yeah, this was kind of the negative variance. Would you say good to get it out of the way early?
Now it's all coming back to me. The big issue here in this team is the captaincy, where I stuck it on Palmer. Logic was, Haaland, Palmer both seemed like good options. I just felt I got on the Palmer train a bit early and that others didn't have Palmer, whereas I had coverage for Haaland in case Haaland goes off. And I expected Palmer to do much better than just get 6 points. So it's turned out to be really, really painful that, it's almost like 11 point. Yeah, there's 11 point gap between Palmer and Haaland in terms of the captaincy decision. But otherwise, I think a very average week in terms of even just the other players, apart from making the error on the captaincy, but it's just a very uninspiring week. It's just Eze and Isaac who did okay. I'm just hoping for better days ahead.
I wouldn't call it a captaincy error. I think it was a marginal decision. Palmer had Palace at home coming off such a free scoring game. It definitely wasn't worth 11 points in it, but there will be those weeks. If one of the big hitters goes and gets a hat trick, you'll see that variance, and it's unfortunate you were on the negative side of it.
Yeah, I feel really sad about Jota not doing anything and Diaz getting like 15 points every single week. That is frustrating me.
I mean,
And,
Jota did return in both Gameweek 1 and 2. 2 out of 3 is really good, I would say, for a 7.5 million midfielder.
Yeah. Anyway, like I'm hoping that getting on Palmer early like one of the reasoning behind getting Palmer early was because of Haaland's tougher fixtures like later on, so that I have another alternate captaincy option. So hopefully, did take a hit as well, which contributed to the rank loss. Hopefully that being ahead from a transfer perspective helps me coming weeks.
Yeah, and I think your team looks really good. Like, you have 4 big hitters at the back. You have Haaland and Palmer. Like, earlier you had Haaland and you kind of distributed the funds. But I think you've got some of the cheap options. You can always go to Pedro from Muniz whenever you want. I don't think your team looks that bad, honestly. Cool. Let's look at something fun now. This is our last minute FPL mini league standings. What this tells me is every single person watching this is doing better at this game than us. So we should probably be the ones listening to their advice. But yeah, we bring up the rear, 11th and 12th, with the AI team having some respect for this podcast by coming 4th so far. So Varun's right at the top with 260 points with both Salah and Haaland. Tarun is 2nd, and Balagopal is 3rd with his Gameweek 3 wildcard doing really well.
Yeah, I don't think you should be listening to any more of this podcast and probably should tune off at this moment.
Yeah, great advertisement for our podcast, this screenshot. I mean, like, it is early days, but it's definitely very funny that we start a podcast in 3 weeks and we're right at the bottom of our very own mini league. Cool. So let's take a look at some of the last week's games. I mean, it feels like such a long time ago. I'm trying to remember which games I saw. But yeah, the United-Liverpool was the obvious one. There's a clear gulf in class between the teams. There was this phase of game where United had, I think, 60% possession, 65% possession. And like, it seemed like, they were at least surviving. But this Liverpool team can turn it on whenever they want. It's like they raise their level just when it's needed. They don't have to go at it all the time. And when they did it in like 10 minutes, there were like 3-4 great chances. They scored a couple of them. And then it was just them kind of sitting back and relaxing. I know United did generate a lot of XG by the end of the game, but Liverpool was never in danger. So, they kind of left the foot off their gas a bit. Worrying signs as a United fan. I think Liverpool look very solid. Like, they could even be title challengers. I know it's very early, but the slot era has definitely started well.
Yeah. The other game that I saw was City West Ham. Hiding behind the couch and watching that, of course, and I felt really, it was terrible seeing that game. West Ham are very loose at the back. Haaland is monstrous. Like, he just needs a sniff, and his finishing is just so clinical. And West Ham very open at the back, which I guess I may not have seen as much of West Ham before, but it seemed very susceptible for almost every single City attack. It seemed like it could lead to a goal. It was just complete domination in the first half, and in the second half tightened up a bit, but City were just a class apart in that game. Chelsea Palace was terribly frustrating. I think I'm coming to the conclusion that Chelsea at home is not a good fixture, like in the sense for Chelsea, because it feels like the team is playing under way more pressure at home. The other team sits deep, so they don't attack, and like when teams come at Chelsea, then I think it opens up, it works out well for the team and so on. Team stays back at Stamford Bridge. Stamford Bridge crowd is pretty toxic at the moment, like with everything happening around the club, and it was a very uninspiring game. So yeah, but I'm feeling pretty nervous owning Palmer. Let's see how this plays out.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, there was definite, like, I caught the last 30 minutes of that game, and ever since Eze scored, it just felt like Chelsea just never came back to that level again. But Palmer did, like, the assist that he got was like put on a plate for Jackson to finish. So I don't think you have to be worried yet. Like, it's still one return a game. It's just the frustration that Haaland got so many returns. But the other game that I watched was I saw the extended highlights, but I saw Arsenal Brighton. We spoke last week about how Arsenal were overperforming their defensive numbers, but I think in this game they got a bit unlucky. It was a red card that really changed the tide of the game. Till then, it didn't seem like they were being threatened all that much. And then Brighton really put on a show. They created a lot of chances, and they have the attacking players to, give even the best defenses a run for their money. And yeah, Joao Pedro knocking in the rebound. I think it was a fair result in the end, if you consider that the red card is fair. And I think it doesn't tell us too much about how Arsenal will be in the coming weeks. I still expect them to be fairly solid. Cool.
Yeah, I think any other game you wanna talk about?
No, I think that's about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at the team data now. So again, Liverpool and City right at the top in the best attacks. Ipswich still right at the bottom. Ipswich and Leicester. Man City is currently overperforming their XG. United and Southampton are the only teams underperforming their XG by more than 0.5. And what this tells us is that all the other 17 teams are within 0.5 of their XG. So it's kind of taking shape. You can say that City is overperforming because of Haaland's incredible finishing. United's underperforming because of some incredible finishing. And Southampton have been unlucky not to score, and they're playing United this week, so I think we know what's going to happen. What stands out to you, Vikas?
I mean, I really like that United's up there, like in terms of XG, which bodes well, like for people owning Bruno. I think Southampton away is potentially like a very, very good fixture. So I do really like United standing out here, especially with when we come to the fixtures. United also have pretty decent fixtures coming up, so that stands out.
Makes sense. Let's look at the defensive data now. So defensive data, one surprise that caught my eye is Nottingham Forest is right up there with City and Liverpool, and Liverpool's playing them at home. So I think that, I still expect Liverpool to score a few goals against them, but it's something to keep in mind. Conceding less than a goal a game on expected goal a game is not a mean feat against any team. The other interesting thing is Liverpool still hasn't conceded a goal. If you get 3 clean sheets in a row, definitely there is some luck involved because you would have conceded a lot of chances at some point or the other. But this could be, like the Liverpool of a few years ago where they, kept 18, 19 clean sheets, and that would make players like Trent and Robbo, who haven't even got attacking returns yet, they could get one of those 180 point, 200 point seasons again.
Yeah, I think Liverpool is a team where we also have these players who have pedigree, very high ceiling, and also nailed. I think very exciting team from an FPL point of view. Other teams that stand out here for me, with the upcoming fixtures, is Villa. Like in terms of defense, they're kind of up there. They do have some cheaper assets to target, especially in that 4.5 range. The team that's opposite of Villa here is Newcastle, who I think they had a pretty good start, but even then they show up in a pretty bad defense on paper. That's very, very surprising to me, and it kind of shows in terms of they're not playing with the best confidence as a team. Trying to bolt from their assets.
Yeah, and I think that I agree with you there. Newcastle and Everton kind of have this flip flop that we've observed over the past few weeks. Everton, for some reason, seemed to be unable. Like, they were leading 2-0 going into the last few minutes of the game, and they conceded 3 goals in 5 minutes. They just can't seem to get anything right. And again, once again, 16 of the 20 teams are within range of their XG. And it's just Liverpool and Newcastle are overperforming, and Everton and Wolves who are underperforming. And I think that makes sense to me. Newcastle had a first game where Pope made a lot of saves. Liverpool have found a way to keep clean sheets, and both Wolves and Everton have definitely looked very shaky at the back.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's look at next week's fixtures. I think the first game that stands out to me is the Southampton United game, because this is kind of like Bruno's last chance. It'll be tough to sell him before the Southampton game, having stuck by him for 3 weeks. I don't think he's been as unlucky as it seemed in the beginning. It was just that first game where he got a couple of chances, and then the second game was that weird offside, but he hasn't really looked good for 2 games now. And I don't know what to expect. Like, I think that Southampton will score. They've been really unlucky not to score so far. Their numbers are looking really good, and United concede a lot of shots. I'm still hopeful as a Bruno owner, not so much as a United fan. What about you? What game?
Yeah, I think this week looks extremely tasty, like from an FPL fixture perspective. Right? Like if you look at kind of like the players that are highly owned, and people, Brighton, like João Pedro, Ipswich at home, Liverpool, Forest. I know that they're doing well from a defensive perspective, but Liverpool are also doing extraordinary. So you do expect points in that game for Trent and Salah, Jota, Diaz. Man City, Brentford at home, again, great fixture. Aston Villa versus a leaky Everton defense looks really good as well. So I think all the fixture, Newcastle versus Wolves, we just spoke about kind of like Wolves defense and Isaac Gordon. Chelsea wreaked havoc there at Wolves. I think Newcastle, it could be a kickstart to Newcastle's campaign as well, that fixture. Spurs Arsenal has potential to be really high scoring. I have Porro in that game, and of course, like Raya. I don't expect anything from Raya, but I'm pretty excited about owning Porro for this game. Like, he could easily sneak away with an assist or a goal. So I think looking at the fixtures, it looks like it's going to be a high-scoring week again. Seemingly becoming a trend.
I think in general, we're seeing that a lot in the Premier League. Like, even when we looked at the XG data, only 3 teams were averaging less than a goal a game in XGC, which means that on average, you can expect 3 clean sheets out of 20. I don't think those numbers were so low in the years gone by. Like, Premier League was known for a lot of 0-0s, 1-0s. Now it seems like teams all want to play on the front foot, or they're just very bad and they'll concede a lot of goals. Like, even the teams that are trying to sit back, it's not really working out like it used to. And I think that makes for some exciting and that's why we're seeing so many high scores. Let's see if it regresses back to the mean. But I don't see that changing anytime soon, because even the big team games like Spurs Arsenal, it looks like it's going to have a lot of goals in it because of the way Spurs play. But Odegaard will be missing, so it'll be interesting to see how that impacts Arsenal.
I think owning Saka, I don't know if he's injured or not, but Saka or Havertz, they're due for points in this game. But the ridiculous high line that Spurs play, really good fixtures this week for attackers.
Cool. Okay, let's go into the forwards. Looking at our AI projections, the AI still thinks that Kai Havertz is the player who it should be ahead of Erling Haaland, which doesn't make any sense. 2 hat-tricks in a row. I actually have Havertz and Sell. But then the other players that it's projecting to do well, Haaland, Isak, Mateta, Watkins, Wood. I think there's a dearth of forwards this year. I don't really like any of the options. A lot of the medium price and cheap forwards are not really exciting. It's like you have Haaland, and then you have Isak, Havertz, and then it's just João Pedro. I'm not really... Let's see if Watkins and Solanke become options again. Watkins seems to be out of form. What stands out to you
Yeah, and forward projections, the two players that I'm looking at are Joe Pedro, because Brighton look really good. They look back to kind of like their best, and they have good fixtures. Pedro seemingly seem nailed on penalties, so Pedro definitely. And Jackson. Chelsea did not end up with Osimhen. I think Jackson's going to be the first choice number 9. So he's been getting like really good chances, like in terms of XG data, he's up there. So with Chelsea's good fixtures, he's another player that I'm targeting, especially I'm looking to move on Isaac after this week.
That makes sense. And if we look at the statistics of the forwards, you'll see that Haaland is averaging 1.3 XGI per game, and I think that's like elite even for his standards, because like even a couple of years ago when he had that incredible season, he was still averaging less than 1. The other two players who I think are very interesting are Wissa and Jackson. I think Jackson gets a lot of stick for not finishing well, but if you look at the data, he's getting a average of 0.76 XGI, and he's returning on average once a game, and I think that's really good. Like he's doing what he's expected to. He did get that incredible 0.99 XG almost chance from Parma, but I think he's looking good. Ivan Nilsson is another interesting one. He's someone who's getting the chances but not being able to put them away. And then yes, you have the Watkins, Havertz, Wood.
What do you think about Watkins, and like, whether Duran is going to affect Watkins this season? Because that does look a bit dicey. Like Watkins coming off at 60 minutes and Duran coming in and doing really well, like scoring goals, looking dangerous.
Yeah, I think that two things are keeping me away from Watkins. One is his price point. Like a couple of weeks ago, we thought that Haaland to Watkins and like a 4.5 mid to someone like a Palmer was like a no-brainer. But that was based on the Watkins we knew a couple of years ago, where he's going to be 90 minutes, penalties. He's like reliable for at least a goal in every 2 games. But this year he's being subbed off early. He's missing big chances. So it's a little dicey to go there, because now you have to start comparing him to some of your other options who are in the 7 million bracket, and they seem like better options. Like even if you look at midfielders like Eze or Mbuemo, like it feels like it's better to have someone at that level and have a forward less if needed. I just can't justify spending 9 million on Watkins right now.
Agree. Yeah.
And yeah, in terms of our recommendations, I have Haaland and buy. I don't actually think that may be the most optimal move, but like from a human perspective, just if you don't have him, you can get him and just have that peace of mind. I know his fixtures are getting tricky, but he has Brentford at home, and would we really be surprised if he got another brace or hat-trick?
Yeah, I think for me, Pedro Jackson, kind of what we spoke about, the player that looked to not get in at this point, even though he scored last week, is Isaac, because like Wolves is a good fixture, sure, this week, but Newcastle's fixtures toughen up, and I think there are probably better options like Havertz or even Jackson that navigate towards.
Yeah, and I think that in terms of Muniz, I would keep him, because I think that the only real option at his price point is probably Joao Pedro now. And I know he's back from international duty, but Muniz is playing West Ham. It's not exactly a difficult fixture. He could easily score. I don't think this is the week to make that move. But Brighton do have a couple of really exciting fixtures coming up. So if you're willing to take that chance of him being benched, because now they have a lot of options, they'll have midweek games. So I just put him in avoid, because if I didn't own him, I wouldn't want to get him the moment he's benched.
Yeah, fair point.
And in sell, I have Havertz going completely against the machine. The machine thinks he's the best player in the world, but I think that if you're to move off someone like Havertz, this is the time to do it. Couple of potentially tricky games, and there are a lot of exciting options coming up in midfield. So maybe downgrade him to someone like a Pedro and then upgrade in other places.
I'd be a bit worried about getting rid of Havertz because um, it's a game where he could go big as well. And he's a player who turns up in these big games like Champions League games, North London Derby. So be a bit worried, but from a logical perspective, it certainly seems very, very fair to move away from Havertz because there are better options.
That makes sense. And who did you have in your keep?
Watkins and Havertz.
Got it.
Watkins, just because we'll have good fixtures. I think if you own him, worth holding on for about another 2 to 3 weeks, see how it goes, and then move on.
Makes sense. Cool. Let's move on to the midfielders. Can you just read out the players who you have in your buy, keep, avoid, and sell? I haven't updated this sheet, so I'll update it right now.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I have Mitoma and Luis Diaz in buy.
Yeah.
So yeah, Brighton have really good fixtures. I think Mitoma, quality player, pedigree. Luis Diaz because I think he'll probably continue starting. He especially if you don't own Salah.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a player that can fill in. So I have Diaz and Mitoma as buy. Keep Bruno, Salah. Bruno, great fixture. Salah, nothing to be said really. And avoid Gordon. Same reasoning as Isaac. I think slowly just staying away from Newcastle, given how they're performing and the fixture turn. I think that's where I'm at with the recommendations.
And what about sell?
Sell, no one's coming to mind as such. I don't have anyone that I'd be looking to immediately get rid. I don't think there's any data point at the moment that stood out for me here.
Got it. Yeah, I have Salah and Mitoma in buy. Both of them have 2 really exciting fixtures coming up, and I think this is the moment to get Salah if you can afford it. If you can't, you just have to hide behind the couch. Mitoma, I think, is a class player. If you have a luxury transfer, and there's a lot of people who would have saved 2 or 3 transfers by now, whether either because they just ditched the game or because they actually planned for it. So if you have a luxury transfer, I would get Mitoma. He'll be a great differential. Keep, I have Jota and Gordon. I still rate Gordon, but I think he is a little more expensive than some of the other cheap midfielders. And Jota I'd keep because I'd be interested to see how Liverpool's starting lineups look in the Champions League and the Premier League. I see a lot of managers selling him, especially on the FPL website. In avoid, I have Semenyo. He has great stats and he has really good returns, but the next 2 fixtures are very difficult. They have Chelsea and Liverpool coming up, I think. And sell, I have Saka, and that's mainly if you can afford to do Saka to Salah. I think you can probably gain a few points in the next 2 weeks.
Makes sense.
And if you look at the statistics, what's interesting to me here is that both Semenyo and Tavernier from Bournemouth are in the top 5 midfielders, and it's not just like one game, right? Now it's 3 games, and they're averaging 0.8 XGI per game, which is
a bit of Bournemouth. Semenyo looked really dangerous, really getting into good positions, taking good shots. Very, very enterprising.
That's very exciting, and I think we can watch them for another couple of weeks against the big teams, because I don't think anyone will want them before Chelsea and Liverpool, but that's something to keep an eye on because they're very cheap and the stats look great. The other player whose stats I think are going a bit under the radar is De Bruyne. He's getting 0.9 XGI per game, and remember the De Bruyne of a few years ago, he was a must-have, and he's not as expensive as some of the other premiums, so he's a good option too. And then yes, the Liverpool midfielders, Salah and Diaz right up there, and some of the other usual suspects, Bruno and Saka. Bruno, as usual, he's the only one highlighted in green because he's still underperforming. He hasn't had any returns. but yeah, I think most of his XG is from the first game. And yeah, I think from the ML. Sorry, you were saying something?
The one other player I think will be important going forward is Embuemo. Scored big, and I think Brentford's fixtures are also turning. Expect him to be a target as well coming soon.
Yeah, I think especially in Gameweek 6, probably when the fixtures turn, he'll be a great option. I think right now you can still justify not having him. He has Man City next. But yeah, definitely once Gameweek 6 rolls around, I think he'll be in a lot of teams. I just thought I'll quickly walk through the AI projections as well. Salah, Palmer, Saka, Diaz, again, usual suspects. Foden makes an entry. It'll be interesting to see if he becomes an option. And then maybe we could even spread the funds out a bit more in midfield. And then, yeah, I think Eze is another one who has kind of underperformed, I would say. He takes so many shots. And yeah, I think it's only a matter of time before he gets a big haul.
Yeah, I'm really glad he actually got something this week. It feels really, really due.
Yeah, both Eze and Isak, I think if they hadn't returned, I think Isak still had a price fall. Did you see what he said about if you sell me, I'll score a brace? I like it again when players talk about FPL.
I think there's good news for Bruno. Bruno's due as well. Southampton, I have really good feeling here.
Well, Bruno also made a comment like that after game week 1, saying, sorry guys, I couldn't return, but like we saw how that went in the last 2 weeks. Cool. Let's move on to defenders. Can you tell me about the players?
So for Bai, I have exactly the same as yours, Trent, Robertson, and I also have Konza, especially if you kind of want to switch around like a 4.5. I would even be tempted to go from Robinson at some point to Konza, just to play the fixtures. Keep up Porro, playing Arsenal, but he's so attacking and it's really fun to own him and watch him play. So Porro, and I still keep the Arsenal players like Saliba, Gabriel, because they are a good defense, even though their data is not as strong. Underlying data is not as strong this season, but just based on previous season's biases, I think they'll come good. Avoid, I put Robinson because of Fulham's fixtures, again, like slightly turning. I think there are better options at that 4.5 range.
And sell?
Sell, again, like no one really stood out. Sorry, I don't have any recommendation to sell anyone. So I think just hold it for this week.
Got it. Yeah, and for me, I agree with you on Trent and Robertson. I think that like next 2 weeks fixtures look great. If you're not wildcarding this week, and let's say you're wildcarding in 6, they're good options. And like if you have to buy Trent and Robertson, you need to sell someone, and that sell I've put as Gabriel and Saliba because they're at the same price point. And I think over the next couple of weeks, I mean Arsenal could keep clean sheets against City and Spurs, but I feel that it's worth a shot, and that's actually the move I'm looking at. Gabriel to Robertson. Haven't made it yet. Luckily, there haven't been any price changes, but that's what I'll be looking to do. In avoid, I have Robinson and Luka Dean. I've just been burnt so many times by him, both at Villa, at Everton, and like I think he got a price rise, or people are close to making him rise in price. It feels like people like. I've never seen him consistently return over a period of time. I think you're better off going with Konza, who you know will play every week. And in keep, I have Guardiola. Again, he's got a lot of sales, but there's something about a City defender who's going to start week in, week out, and I think he's worth the extra money.
Agree. Yeah. 2 players that are standing out in the recommendation that you have in the table are Milinkovic. He was like competing with Trent right up there, which is incredible. And Rico Lewis, because he's just so good. He's so good, like just to watch him play. But I think maybe the best time has passed to own Rico Lewis because Walker is going to come back, and it's to be seen how that shapes out.
Yeah, and I think that the other player who stands out in the table is Seamus Coleman. I didn't even realize that he was still playing till I saw him right at the top of this. He's played only one game and he's already orange flagged, so I don't think he's going to play, but I thought good opportunity to show people that he's still around. And yes, Trent, of course. Trent, and like both Trent and Milenkovic haven't gotten any attacking returns. And I think the other player who's slowly making his way into this table is Guardiola. Like at some point, I would expect him to. I don't think Lewis will play every game, so there will be games where Walker will start playing and Guardiola will play that attacking role and get some returns. I think not much.
That's a good impact, especially, yeah. If Lewis goes out of the team, then I think Guardiola definitely becomes more attractive.
He'll become the player he was in the end of last season for sure. And right at the bottom, there's Ait Nouri. He sometimes gets these attacking numbers, but Wolves as a defense, I just wouldn't go anywhere near them.
Agree.
Not much to add in terms of AI projections. It's all the premium players from the three big defenses. So
I think defense has become a tough thing to juggle. It's just you're really just looking at the top 2, 3, 4 teams with scrounging around to fill up the rest based on fixtures, because clean sheets are such a rarity. Seemingly,
which is why I like the structure of your team. You have 4 big players from 4 big teams, and I think you don't really need to move players around. I've been making transfers with Kwanzaa and Konza, and now I'm also thinking of moving Gabriel to Robertson. It could go south. Gabriel could get a header against anyone, but I just want that upside of having 2 good fixtures. I don't have any Liverpool attacking players, hoping that Robertson gets some attacking returns. And it's been a long time since I owned both Robertson and Trent. Those were some fun times.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's go to goalkeepers. Can you tell me your recommendations?
Here, just one thing is Pickford clearly is not a player you want to keep, even though he seemed tempting in the beginning of the season. I think he's a sell.
And an avoid, I'm guessing.
Sell, avoid everything. Yeah. Get rid of Pickford. Apart from that, I think it's just hold your keepers. If you're wildcarding, have Sanchez, same recommendation as last time. I think he's the number 1 keeper, that Maresca said. Good fixtures, and Chelsea, even though they're conceding goals, I think he's the best of the lot.
Yeah, I think that's my recommendation too. Sanchez or Henderson on wildcard. Henderson has some good fixtures coming up. Sanchez is like a standout 4.5 keeper. Otherwise, I wouldn't make any moves. And I think even the statistics table is kind of taking shape. You're seeing Edison, Alisson rising towards the top. Raya is still quite a bit below what we'd expect him to be, but yes, they did play a good chunk of the last game against 10 men, so I wouldn't give it too much thought. I would still rely more on last season's data for team defense at least. Cool. Let's move on to the wildcard teams. The AI has selected a wildcard team on the left. Of course, it's chosen Havertz. It's not gone with Haaland again. But I think it kind of makes sense if you think about it. I think Haaland's fixtures really turn in game week 8. I would personally go with a triple Liverpool. If I was wildcarding this week, I would make sure that I had Salah, Trent and Robertson. Only because with Champions League starting, you don't want the worry of rotation. They have a couple of amazing games with Forest at home. I think Bournemouth at home is after that. And because I want to play it safe, I would go with Haaland as well. The one player in the wildcard team on the right who I would be willing to sacrifice is Saka. Currently, I couldn't think of a way to get someone who's a higher price. I thought Mbeumo still has a couple of tricky fixtures, so I still chose Saka, but I'd definitely be open to finding some money and upgrading someone in defense. What do you think of that?
I think these teams look really good. Rodgers is especially nice on a wildcard for this week because I don't know, if Watkins if he's injured or if he doesn't play, Rogers could be on penalties. Like I think he took a penalty in the internationals part of England on 21. So possibly he could be on penalties. Exciting pick, and save some money. Vardy, I really like the Vardy pick. What's your reasoning on?
Yeah, I think of course, the price was a big consideration. Adam Armstrong, I don't know if his place is fixed in Southampton. They still haven't scored a goal. And like some nostalgia there. Like the good old days when Vardy was actually 5.5, but he scored like 200 points.
Is he still on penalties in Leicester?
I don't know actually. Yeah, I think it should be him. I mean, he has scored so many penalties in the past. I can't think of who else would take the penalties.
Yeah, I mean, the really nice thing about the Wildcard team then is like, if Rogers on penalties this week, João Pedro, Vardy, even on the options where you're saving some money, there are routes to points.
And we've seen far lesser penalties this year. I'm hoping that we see some more. I think some of those outrageous decisions where, the defender didn't know what was happening and it touches his fingertips and they give a penalty. I think that has changed. Although it's only been 3 weeks, so it'll be interesting to see how that evolves.
Yeah. I think I'm with you though. Like overall, I would try to cram as many Liverpool players as possible. You did with Robertson and Trent. I would also be tempted to go Jota and Diaz just for that higher ceiling. With keeping Trent and moving Robertson on for one of those two. But otherwise, I'm thinking I kind of have something similar to what you have.
Yeah. Cool. So let's look at the AI team for next week. In the top 1,800,000 is a very decent rank at this time of the season. It has Salah, Palmer and Saka. I think this is a really nice looking team. The transfer that it is considering is the same transfer that I'm considering. Gabriel to Robertson is the most optimal move. And it already has a free transfer saved from the previous week, so 2 frees, and I think if there are no price changes before the deadline, that's the move the AI team will be making.
I think it's a very scary week. All week seems scary. Like so far, it's not been much of a difference because Haaland's been scoring, Salah's been scoring, everyone's been scoring, basically. It could be a week where Salah gets like 15, 17 points, Haaland blanks, and vice versa, and those weeks are just going to be brutal.
Yeah.
So. And that will happen. It can't just continue in the same trajectory.
It's only a matter of time, and I think we just have to see which way the coin flips. And that's why I'm envious of the people who own both. They'll have a good night's sleep because we are basically look at this team. Like it basically has Saka and Palmer, which means it's like 3 premiums, and then you have players like Eze, João Pedro, Isak, and Havertz, which makes it look like all the 7 attackers are players in form, players who are capable of scoring double-digit points. Whereas, like if we go to my team, that's next, and I'm 2 points ahead of you now because of last week. But in my team, I have Smith Rowe, who suddenly seems to be playing central mid. Like he's playing like a weird number 8 position. And this is why, like, there are some transfers you make where you don't really watch the player. Like, I think even Rogers, like, if I had gone for Rogers, like, I'd never seen him play. But sometimes you feel something in a moment and you get a player and they'll be stuck in your team for a few weeks. Because even if the fixtures look good, for example, he's getting subbed off early. I found out he's playing central mid. And then there's Bruno Fernandes. United don't look great. So even though I have Haaland, I don't have Salah, and I have a bunch of seemingly problems in attack. And yes, the move I'll be making is Gabriel to Robertson and captaining Haaland.
I mean, on paper, the team looks really strong. I think it's just like what we described before. Fixtures look really good for the players. I think most of our own. It's a coin flip, like you said. Anything can happen. And it's kind of like the Palmer Haaland thing. Someone's going to get unlucky.
Yeah. And I don't think that'll be you, because last week you got unlucky, and I hope that you don't have 2 weeks of bad luck in a row. I see that you've already made your move.
Yeah, one exactly the thing that you said don't do. I moved Muniz to Pedro, so I was containing my laughter back there a little bit. So I just could not take Muniz sitting there and blanking every week with 2 pointers. Uh,
I
it
was
just
wondering
like
why you were laughing.
it just built up over time, and I had to make this move. Yeah, I mean, Muni's probably going to score this week, but even so, like I think João Pedro has convinced me. I was lukewarm on him to start the season because I didn't know whether it's going to have this place and so on. But I think he seems good for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Of course, there's some risk with the international break, and I just wanted to get Muni's out. I think that is the main motivation.
No, I think, I mean, on paper, it's definitely a good move. Like, Ipswich at home is the easiest fixture any team can have. I was just talking about it from a point of maybe save a transfer and see, but if Pedro starts, then definitely it's a good move on paper. I think
Otherwise,
your team looks really nice, actually. Everyone has really good fixtures in attack. The only person who has tricky fixtures is Poro and Raya, but that could Poro could easily get attacking returns. Raya could keep a clean sheet against Spurs too. So really balanced team.
Yeah, I just I mean, it looks good, but there's so many unknowns, like you said, like Rogers. I don't know, it looks good, but I actually don't know what to expect from him. Like, what is he someone who can actually get FPL points, or he's just like someone who just looks good and does a few dribbles? I don't know, like, very.
I mean, I have the same doubts about him, same questions, which is why I didn't go for him. But you're paying just 5 million, right? Like, it's not. Like, even if he gets 1 return in 3 games or even 1 in 4, he's just doing a job of letting you get these other 10 players. And even if the other 10 players get you points, he's probably playing his role.
Yeah, I got him mainly because Villa have good fixtures, and it's like a throw the dice type of thing, like see how it does. But I don't like the fact that if he's not performing well, it feels like I'm playing with 10 people, 10 players. I imbalanced the team by downgrading him to downgrading to Rogers for upgrading to Palmer.
But I think that's fine. It allows you to keep Palmer, and if Palmer pays off, then Rogers has played his role. But yeah, like you said, it's a low risk move. It's a roll of a dice. Even if he gets an assist, I'm sure you'll be celebrating.
I'm really hoping Jota kicks off this game like that. Enough of TS scoring double digit points. It's time for to rotate the points around.
Yeah, that's the new Salah Mane, Jota and Diaz. But then Salah's still around though. And what about captaincy? Any?
I'm not going anywhere else. Lesson learned.
Yeah, I think it's tough with City playing at home against pretty much anyone except maybe Arsenal and Liverpool. It's but if you had Salah, would you go for Salah captain, or would you still go for Haaland?
I think I'd still go for Haaland because I mean both. It's 50-50. I think I like the Palmer thing, but just based on the defensive data of Forest, I would just go Haaland.
And have you thought about when you'll play a wildcard?
Yeah, I'm looking at probably around the Gameweek 6, Gameweek 7 range, because that's when there's going to be enough data, and I already see a lot of fires in my team. It's just kind of like accumulating week on week, and I anticipate in another 2-3 weeks I will have a lot more fires to put out. There are some good fixture turns like Mboemo that we spoke about. New players that we can get in, players like Rogers to get out if they're not performing well. João Pedro maybe loses a spot. So I see a lot of issues cropping up with some fixture turn and the 6, 7, 8 game week range, and that's when I'm targeting wildcard.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a game week 6 wildcard personally. I think that's a good time to I'll have double Liverpool defense. It'll be a good time to move away, at least from Robertson. And yeah, there are a lot of fixture turns coming. Arsenal players will have good fixtures again. The AI, I ran some simulations with the AI team to see what's an optimal wildcard. At least for the AI's team, it looks like game week 8 is the week that it's looking to wildcard. That seems to give it the most expected points. But yeah, I would be wary of using those numbers because predicting something so far out into the future, a lot of things could change: injuries, suspensions, tactics, form. So yeah, but that's what the AI team is looking at right now.
Makes sense.
Cool. I think that brings us to the end of the episode. a few technical glitches where I forgot to update the slides. But hope you enjoyed it. Any parting words, Vikas?
No, yeah, I think now I feel refreshed. I did feel a lot of frustration looking at Palmer and just completely forgotten about refresh. So I'm actually again looking forward to the weekend.
Yeah, I think like funny thing that happened this week where I was talking to one of our friends, Sampy, and he was asking what rank to aim for, 100k or like 50k, and I actually quoted the Bhagavad Gita to him. I said, just do your duty and don't look at the result. If only we use that in other areas of life.
Yeah.